desire. We see Stefano going first here, so some potential for early dominate to leak some damage free of charge. Something I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing.
Now, we've talked about Stefano throughout this weekend as a player to watch, as an Azalea specialist. We've seen him on camera throughout this weekend. It feels like he's becoming the protagonist of the tournament. Something we haven't talked about these last few times we've seen him up here is he is a hometown hero. He is Italian. Here at this Italian calling, and across the table, another Italian. So not only are we necessarily going to get a living legend final, we're also going to get an Italian, a local player in the final as well.
Yeah, I think anyone who maybe isn't familiar with the competitive Flesh and Blood scene might not be aware, but the Italians, they know how to play Flesh and Blood. They are certainly an incredible range of characters. They have an incredible skill set, and we're seeing that on full display this weekend. As the Emperor Rome sleeves for Tommaso Vicido are nice and clear on the table, you can tell where those loyalties lie. That team, an incredible suite of players from here in Italy. I'm really happy to see them finding some success this weekend.
We see this from Stefano. He's already flipped up his equipment. He's ready for this game. He knows what he's presenting, and I think he knows that his opponent, as a familiar player, knows exactly what he's presenting. Stefano is a Azalea player through and through, clearly committed to that Skullbone cross-wrap, ever important in this matchup as well. There's no mysteries here.
Yeah, no mysteries indeed. The expected suite for our new player as well. We've seen that Spider's Bite making an appearance a few times over the course of this weekend. Azalea, not really a hero that wants to block, but Spider's Bite capable of making them arguably unable to block at times.
I think the role of the Spider's Bite on the new side of this matchup is occasionally you're going to be doing that Dagger, Tunic, Codex, CNC line as the new player, because CNC has so much potency against Azalea. If you use a Beckoning Mistblade there, it's just the 7 damage and the CNC on hit on 6. If you use the Spider's Bite, that CNC is unavoidable, meaning they can't pick the right card for the moment off Codex. They just have to lose the card.
We see Knock the Death Whistle to kick things off this game, searching for Endless Arrow. This feels like a very interesting choice. Stefano already showcasing they're not interested in losing cards this early in the game. Endless Arrow dominated is going to find its way back to you.
That's the thing. I think Stefano wants to use this Knock the Death Whistle on turn 0 to deal as much damage as possible. Could have picked something like Red in the Ledger, but knew has plays that he could do on turn 1 that get around the Red in the Ledger anyways. This Endless Arrow lets him buff it all the way to 10 instead of just playing 1 buff for 7 or 8 off of one of those 1 costs. He goes to 10, gets the Endless back, starts with an Arsenal, and has dealt possibly up to 6 or 7 damage here.
Yeah, even more importantly, that Seek and Destroy trigger coming out on turn 0 does mean that Tommaso will not have the flexibility to keep around defense reactions or other potent cards in that arsenal as their first turn progresses. Pretty perfect start here for Stefano.
I am interested by what I see in Tommaso's hand already. There's just 3 cards. We're going to get another, but we see a Surgical Extraction and we see blues. There are ways to play this turn, and we see a Warmonger's Diplomacy. There's a lot of options available to Tommaso here that can truly punish his opponent regardless of that Seek and Destroy effect.
We see them debating exactly how they want to pitch here. Going to be starting things off with a dagger some which way, but that Codex of Frailty not at its most powerful at this stage of the game. We see the Warmonger's Diplomacy pitched away for a later day to enable Beckoning Mistblade, and we see maybe the earliest long draw half club block I've ever seen. I really like this. The Warmonger's Diplomacy being pitched here is definitely suggestive of a chance of a second copy being available in the hand for Tommaso. And by blocking with these long draw half clubs, we're ready if that's the case.
And it's not just that, but he does have a good read that maybe Tommaso has another disruptive ability that's going to come in the form of an attack. And that's why he decides to pitch that Warmonger's away. In this case, it's going to be that Surgical Extraction, this long draw half clubs, denying the ability to go again off the Surgical and do more after it. Instead, it's just going to come in for 4 if he does end up playing it.
Spider's Bite will connect, will drain some blocking power from any arrows. Stefano may have access to it. Will be Surgical Extraction as the follow-up here. 4 points of damage, threatening to rip away a card from our Azalea.
Diligent and careful play. There were other avenues available to Tommaso. He could have led with that Surgical Extraction, holding that Warmonger's and maybe using his boots to play out this Warmonger's at the end of the turn. With that 5 pitch available, he even could have woven a dagger into there. Instead saying, I want to make sure I get that block off the boots and that block off the arms later on in this game for full effect before I pop it too preemptively.
That surgical will connect. It eats a copy of Knock the Death Whistle to make a silver. And we'll take a look at Stefano's hand together. We see Bolt-in Shot, Falcon Wing, and 2 different buffs. So hard to pick a hole in this hand.
We know that the Endless Arrow is in Arsenal, so there are a limitation to the number of actions and arrows that Stefano can play here. Maybe it tells Tommaso this is a time to take a buff.
Interesting decision, and we do see Tommaso doing exactly that. Love to see the premeditate taken away, trying to strip away the potential for that free Arsenal from that Ponder token as we make our way back to Stefano's turn here. Tommaso just making sure they stack their pitch stack correctly. You never know. We might get back to that.
I think we will get back to that, to be honest. Stefano here hoping to hit something like a buff off the top of the deck with that Azalea ability. Then he's going to be able to activate Death Dealer and load one of those arrows. Notably, it being a Bolt-in Shot means he'll also be able to fire the other one if he draws into a card off the Death Dealer that he wants to Arsenal. Otherwise, one of those arrows can go straight into Arsenal himself.
Azalea activation tucks that Endless Arrow away for a rainy day. It will be a different, uniquely qualified Endless Arrow making its way into the Arsenal. This one packed with a bonus dose of Dominate, lined up with Lace with Frailty for 7 points of damage.
Frailty not to be scoffed at in this matchup. It turns those daggers off. So if Tommaso ever has a line that he wants to be able to give a blue go again, something like a Bonds of Agony or a Persuasive Prognosis, or even buff up a Levels or a Surgical Extraction, not going to work on any turn you have a Frailty. It is a relevant disease in this matchup.
We see Sink Below at the front of the hand there for Tommaso. Levels of Enlightenment, Leave No Witnesses, also available in his hand. We see the defense reaction doing what it does best, sinking away, fixing the hand, and finding an Enlightened strike here for Tommaso. The potential to chain together a surprisingly aggressive hand.
Does look like we have full gas options here to Tommaso. If we did see the Snapdragon Scalers on this Endless Arrow, that means there's going to be another attack here. Tommaso also has option. All of those cards are playable. All of those cards have 3 block in the bottom right. He could still choose to defend out this arrow and possibly the arrow that follows it.
Death Dealer here loading the Bolt-in Shot. We see it committed here with no buffs. None at all.
Stefano was hoping when he loaded that Bolt-in Shot that he could have drawn a buff. There is, of course, the chance that he drew into the Rain Razors. We didn't see it in the hand earlier. He might have been hoping this is the higher upside play. If I draw into a 0 for 3 buff, it becomes 7, and then I Arsenal his Endless Arrow and fired at the end of the turn. Huge turn. If he didn't draw Rain Razors, he gets a little bit punished, but I think it's worth it to go for that big turn because the goal of the game against these defensive and disruptive decks like New is get damage in whenever they let you, and this was a turn where they let him.
We do see one of those cards going to waste here for Stefano, opening up some breathing room for Tommaso on the other side. Enlightened Strike was the block of choice. 1 point of damage making its way through, and I love to see this from Stefano. They understand the level of Arsenal interaction available to New as a hero, contemplating which of these cards is the correct choice to park down there safely.
Not sure which one he chose between the Endless Arrow and the other card. I believe the other card should have been an arrow or maybe something like a Codex of Frailty. Otherwise, it's not a buff. Otherwise, I think it would have seen play. Stefano diligently deciding what to put into the Arsenal and being rewarded for it if he made what he thinks is the right decision, because there is a Leave No Witnesses coming at him. So if he put the more losable card down there maybe, then this was the heads up play.
This time around, it will earn some defense from Stefano, but notably 2 arrows on blocking duty there. That's important for numerous reasons. Less ammo to work with as the game goes long, but also very possible a slightly redundant hand here for Stefano. Had no better way of using all those cards. We'll find Azalea taking another spin. We've seen this time and again from Stefano. The plan in this matchup is to dominate often and consistently and make everything come together. They will find Take Aim to reload this time around. No need. Will Death Dealer to put an arrow into Arsenal instead, pitching away that tar pit trap, loading up Red in the Ledger.
I think this is a perfect example of one of those turns where you're just jockeying. He's not dealing a huge amount of damage. It's just 8. He didn't go for the Dominate, but it's because he has the Red in the Ledger, which forces some kind of response out of the New. It also shows the diligence of Azalea. He might have had too many arrows in that hand, which means it was a good opportunity to block, but also because he decided to put that Endless Arrow in Arsenal, he's showing again. He showed this against Pablo, and he's showing it again. That Endless Arrow is the most important arrow in the game because it represents not just one arrow, but possibly several several arrows in your deck. You can't run out if you still have Endless Arrow available.
A suite of red reactions on blocking duty there for Tommaso Vesquido. Will be making their way into their turn with an Art of Desire body. This one almost certain in a way to draw, but I've certainly seen Yellow Spire sniping cause some problems before.
I have some terrible luck with this card. If anything in this game has cursed me, it's Art of Desire body. When I'm playing New or Arachne, I can play against Aurora, Syndra, and Azalea and hit exclusively yellows off the top of the deck.
It will be Remorseless on blocking duty this time around. The card will be drawn as a result, that card being banished to New's ability. But currently, no go again granted. We're just going to be more than content parking that card we held, which I believe was a Codex of Frailty in the arsenal.
I think that's a heads-up play. Yes, it IPs one if it does hit off the top, but it does two things. Stefano's really disincentivized to block because of the hero text and how it interacts with that card. And if it hits an arrow off the top, your count of arrows remaining goes down one, and you gain a life, meaning you get war buffer against that dominate. So Tommaso playing in such a way that still plays around Stefano's game plan there.
Azalea spinning again here, finds a buff in lace with Blood Rot, will be Death Dealer, loading up an arrow to fire. It will be Drill Shot this time around. Noticeably, that equipment suite for Tommaso. Oh, Yahtzee! We find 3 copies of Lace with Inertia. You can't remove 3 arsenals, but you can do 16 damage.
I think he wishes he had Dominate here and that Drill Shot was in Arsenal instead of in hand to be loaded, but it's still a very happy outcome for him. 16 is a number. This is going to deal at least 4-ish, depending on what gets blocked, or depending on what block is available. The Blood Rot will come in for a little bit more. It'll take that inertia, meaning you have more defensive or offensive ability in the future if that is a defense reaction in hand. He couldn't park it in Arsenal to get around Dominate. This is a pretty good turn. This is doing the thing you want to do, which is get damage through in the spots they give it to you.
Chat, is this good? Please explain why. 16 damage. Not a bad number. We see 2 cards being debated here for Tommaso on blocking duty. Interestingly, not reaching for that armor just yet. Maybe willing to sacrifice 1 piece to preserve the rest for a later turn.
You cursed it.
That's just how commentary works. Reaching and debating that arousing wave and silent stilettos, undertow stilettos. Oh, there's so many shoes. So many shoes to think about.
I think it is quite a diligent decision to not go for those. It's debatable. We saw Tommaso debating it, but holding on to at least one of them, or if Stefano decides to put a -1 on the mask and then giving access to the arousing and undertow, still able to block later. If Stefano ever has to respond to a disruptive hand by just coming in with something like a red in the ledger for 5, he'll still have block available on the equipment to do that on a more important on-hit than this Drill Shot.
Looks like it is that mask being debated, as are the stilettos. It will be the shoes being removed from the equation here. And we'll make our way back to Tommaso. Looks like a surgical extraction and a Passover in the hand here. Means we'll be starting things off with that Beckoning Mistblade and using that tunic to hopefully leverage a 5 power surgical with a little bit of luck.
With no real block left on equipment unless he's willing to give up the tunic, this Beckoning Mistblade is more reliable from the news side. Often you don't want to be planning around it hitting, and when you have no armor available, you can sort of expect it to hit. Stefano, though, understands the potency of that card, and having a great read on there being something like surgical. That's why Tommaso would have led with that dagger. He's also playing against a player, sees that the dagger is leading, sees that it's important, and that surgical gets pushed to pitch. If he hadn't done it this way, this would have been Mistblade into surgical 5 go again into that Codex and Arsenal for leave no witnesses. Instead, it's going to be dagger, dagger, Codex for CNC. Still very potent, but a little bit less so.
Yeah, talk about a great read here. We kind of saw that surgical being pitched, and immediately Stefano reached for the Arsenal. The implications of pitching surgical means there has to be something better to do with your time, and Codex of Frailty was certainly part of that equation. We look at leave no witnesses. We do take a peek at that surgical extraction down there as well. So a few options to select here potentially for Tommaso.
Tommaso wishes he had a CNC. I called it out earlier, but it doesn't seem like he's found a Command and Conquer available to go into that grave in this first quarter-ish of the game. So leave no witnesses being the choice. There's some wasted resources here.
Yeah, certainly not ideal for Tommaso as this turn has played out, but Codex of Frailty looking to leverage its power nonetheless. We'll find Stefano popping Amplifying Arrow back into the Arsenal for now. We'll see what they relinquish from their discard. Be a copy of Bolton's shot. That arrow turned quickly face down. And we'll see if Stefano is interested in keeping that safe for a future turn.
That's the question. Did he pick amplifying because it's yellow, denies the silver, and he doesn't care about losing it as an option for a codex later in the game? Or did he pick amplifying because he intends to block 4 or 5 in this spot and then have that amplifying arrow for one big last turn after he ships it to the bottom with Azalea?
Yeah, worth noting that a rousing wave definitely playing a real factor in this turn. Does offer the ability to jump this Leave No Witnesses up to 5 and score the Arsenal. We do see that amplifying arrow being defended, Leave No Witness being respected. 5 block here from Stefano.
I like this play. It shows that he has a game plan of which arrows he wants to have available late in the game. In this case, protecting that amplifying arrow, knowing he'll have some buffs available to him and he can maybe come in for some massive number like 18. Because Tommaso didn't have to pop the Tunic on that turn without the Beckoning Mistblade line, he's instead able to convert that Tunic resource into 2 health, defending against the Blood Rot with that 2 floating. Also an effective way to use those resources, paying off for the bimodal way he had planned out his turn.
We'll make our way back to Stefano, just confirming if they have already ticked up their Tunic before continuing. And fanning through that yard. This is kind of what you alluded to at the start of this game. Players just confirming they understand what has happened on every turn sequence so far. Flipping over that amplifying arrow, taking a peek with Skullbone Cross Wrap, as we have seen so many times on the weekend so far. That card will go to the bottom for now.
Doesn't want to risk losing that amplifying arrow to a Leave No Witnesses in CNC without getting any value off of it, including the Skullbone Cross Wrap value, so might as well cash that in now. Next turn, it matters a little bit whether it's top of deck or whether it's face up or face down in order to activate the Skullbone again, but he's fine with it as is.
Yeah, that amplifying arrow saved for next turn. Not tucked away with Azalea just yet as we make our way back to Tommaso here. Does have a life discrepancy to cover, but definitely has control of the narrative right now. We'll see Bonds of Agony pitch to facilitate Beckoning Mistblade. Let's see if we can see what else they're working with this turn. Levels of Enlightenment. They finally found that Command and Conquer. And the cheeky Sigil of Solace doing a great job at representing tricks, of course. Levels of Enlightenment here happily rewarded for this Beckoning Mistblade. Doing a fantastic job at drawing a bonus card. We see Bonds of Attraction, the pickup here as a result of the go again. Granted, it will be used to fuel this Command and Conquer. And of course, that Sigil will find plenty of value towards the end of this turn.
Command and Conquer coming 1 turn too late to be in the grave for that Codex last turn, but it's still very potent here. It's taking Stefano off of this amplifying arrow that he's clearly protected, but also drawing that card off that Level's Enlightenment. He's still able to play it, and pay for giving it go again as well. He'll keep doing a lot of things. Playing that Sigil here tells me that Arsenal, the famous Codex of Frailty.
Pretty impressive stuff. Those stilettos are cashed in to tie everything together, slithering along to Codex of Frailty. Once again, this dilemma will face both of our players. Ponder and Frailty enacted on the table. Leave No Witnesses on the horizon.
One of the strongest things you can do in New is take an opponent's Arsenal, give that attack go again, and then Codex to force them to put another card into Arsenal, discarding a card out of their hand when they do so, and because you're playing an Assassin, you can pick a card that then takes that Arsenal as well. That's 3 cards out with this play.
Stefano here needs to deliberate what they're willing to give away. Let's see as they pull back and remove their hand from the view. I got to get better at the timing on this thing.
I think I was going to say a little bit earlier that there's a part of this game where the Azalea's life total is not strictly an important metric of whether this game is successful for the New or not. It can be. You can win games on life and just threatening their life total if you roll in some scenarios, but often it's going to be about arrow count and deck count. However, a turn ago I would have said that was the case for this game. Now, Stefano is going to be behind on life probably by the end of this turn, and Tommaso having strung together this very disruptive turn, he's going to have tempo. So there is a possibility that we're going to start seeing one of those new Azalea games where Azalea goes low enough thanks to New's disruptive abilities and you know, continued aggression, drawing the right cards and continuing to roll his opponent, that maybe by the end of this, New will be responsible for stripping cards from Azalea just on raw damage instead of on disruption.
We see Amplifying Arrow brought back once more. Rain Razors discarded. It will be Leave No Witnesses connecting this time. Another Rain Razors lost from the top of the deck there. That's a lot of endgame power and Bolton Shot enabling. Lost to Stefano. But they do have 3 cards to work with here to try and gain back reload on our behalf. We'll flip over that Falcon Wing to look at the top card of the deck. Try and find something worth dominating away. This time, no dice. 6 go again, courtesy of Falcon Wing. This feels like a Codex lurking in the midst for Stefano.
It could be something like that, but if you are planning on firing another arrow with something like Codex of Frailty, having a Frailty yourself, being given it by your opponent's Codex on the previous turn, that gains 2 value for Tommaso's Codex of Frailty here. 1 on this Falcon Wing and 1 on whatever follows this. It's fine for Stefano, but he's not dealing the damage we've been saying he needs to do.
Yeah, definitely some subpar turns for Stefano Mioni here. That 1 card remains. We see Venomous Bite and Hiss stuck together in the hand again for Tommaso Vecino. These attack reactions serving best as defensive tools so far in this matchup.
And that's fine. I think often this is a matchup where Nu doesn't want to be playing out too many cards greedily. At least you do it if you get the opportunity, but otherwise you don't. And otherwise, they're really good 3 blocks.
Really good 3 blocks indeed.
That's what the deck wants to do.
That is what they are. Cannot deny that. Tommaso here taking the time. Let's see if we can figure out what's joined those reactions in their hand. Not quite. No dice. Okay. Homage to Ancestors there alongside that Venomous Bite. So 1 Chi card unable to block at the least. We'll take 2 damage here.
We're going to see what the follow-up from Stefano is, whether it was a Codex or whether that was just the best thing he could string together. It is a Codex. He's going to attack. It's not going to be huge thanks to the Frailty, but he's throwing a Frailty back to his opponent. Those daggers are turned off for this turn. He's creating a Ponder. If there's no disruptive capabilities, no Arsenal Destruction for Tommaso, this Ponder means that Stefano can get that impressive 5-card hand, that 17 Dominate on the next turn instead.
Yeah, Drill Shot for 3 here. Definitely not ideal. Earns the Hiss as a result, but I kind of agree with you here. That Frailty token definitely feels like the most important part of this equation. These tokens, the bane of both players here. Definitely guilty of shutting down their capabilities. We see Persuasive Prognosis as the follow-up. We know that Homage to Ancestors was in hand, so this is very likely to be threatening a Mask of Recurring Nightmares activation here.
Absolutely. One of the ways to play against Assassin, and in particular to play against Nu, is to pay attention to what cards they block with, and then what they attack with. In this case, Tommaso blocked with a Venomous Bite and a Hiss, and then throws down a Persuasive Prognosis. Does that tell Stefano that this is a Chi? Is a question of whether Stefano can read that correctly. It could also be a Justinic, and then you would block with those other reactions that require a pitch card and not hold this Persuasive Prognosis. But it's certainly weird to see attack reactions hit the bin and then have Persuasive played against you. It raises some alarm bells.
And we'll see the respect given to Justinic here with a block for 6 with these 2 arrows. And of course, the sidestep will be slightly punishing here. Homage to Ancestors will gain a life and then strip another card from Stefano's hand, courtesy of Mask. And you see it on their face. That is the last thing they wanted to see.
And that's the trick of blocking with that Hiss and Venomous. He's able to convince him, I think this might be a Justinic. Without the tunic up, this is the way that explains this Persuasive Prognosis attack after blocking with those cards. Though Stefano gets the wrong read, he blocks 6. That also benefits Tommaso because that Banish from the hero ability will gain him 2 more life. So Tommaso getting totally the right end of the stick in that exchange, and Stefano unfortunately getting the wrong read on what was available to Tommaso that turn.
The follow-up will be Seek and Destroy here, allowing this Bolton Shot to come in for 6 with Go again. Card drawn from Death Dealer does threaten a reload in a pinch. 24-19 here. These players definitely got to be a little mindful as the life totals make their way down as to how this game will progress. We see Enlightened Strike dedicated to the blocks here. A Sink Below in the hand for Tommaso will be used to block out the rest of this damage and keep their other 2 cards. No Sink. Another Codex of Frailty. This card defining the matchup time and again as these players attempt to chain together Frailty tokens and keep the assault coming.
He denied himself some of that value off the Sink Below because he thought that the Bolton Shot reload would be very important with Death Dealer already tapped here and this being a long draw half glove matchup. Fortunately for Stefano, it was a Codex, which gets around that, and maybe Tommaso now wishing he had actually kept that 4 block available in hand. But Still has a block in arms, which I believe is now left in his hand by accident. He can block this 4 kind of cleanly and get the value off the drill shot, not let that -1 counter do too much against him.
Drill shot for 4 here, kind of forcing the issue with that armor block one way or the other. We see not ideal for Tommaso. That Command and Conquer in hand alongside a blue does mean they would prefer to keep their hand together. They do so here. 3 damage from the drill shot is taken. Will the counter go atop the tunic or the mask? It will be the mask that is lightly chewed on as we make our way back to Tommaso.
It almost serves Tommaso here in this weird twisted way because you want to be able to have that 1 floating for a rousing wave on a turn you're coming with a Command and Conquer, and he does. He's pitching a blue for CNC. Having a counter, a -1 counter on the arousing wave serves him here. It gives Stefano a little think. It almost says, don't block this for 6 because it's going to become 7.
Stefano will have to debate that arousing wave as they consider their blocks here. That card in Arsenal under threat from Command and Conquer, of course. Fiendo's Spring Tunic capable of covering 7 if they are worried about keeping that card intact. Stefano here debating their options. Command and Conquer, of course, very pressing, arguably slightly problematic at times for a deck like Azalea.
Tommaso reading through his own graveyard here, checking what he has left available to him. It's a bit too early in his deck for really to be looking at threat density. That's also not the matchup. It's not about what offensive capabilities he has left. Really, the question is, what defense reactions does he have left and defensive capabilities? In terms of offense, he might be checking for Command and Conquers, in which case there's 1 copy left in his deck, but he wants to see, is he going to be able to live through whatever Stefano can do in these future turns and slow him down with some of these cards like CNCs and Leave No Witnesses, and otherwise, what will he have to do to get through that other half of Stefano's deck that we still see?
With those graveyards being contemplated here by Stefano, weighing up the repercussions of letting their arsenal go, cards they block with in their hand, into the abyss forever. We see a cheeky peek at the opposing graveyard as well. Let's see if we can wrap our head around that hand now that it's on the table. We see Release the Tension in the corner there.
I believe that might be 2 Release the Tensions, which can be very important cards in this matchup. So Stefano may be wanting to be able to pair them with a very large attack, especially a very large dominate attack like the one that would be able to be presented on this turn, having that card in Arsenal. But facing down the fact that he can't keep a card in Arsenal, maybe that Release the Tension is better used for block.
Yeah, remorseless bolt-in shot here, the arrows of choice as well. Incredible to see Stefano here weighing up the value of blocking 8 on this Command and Conquer and keeping that Arsenal safe for a future turn, saving their Tunic breakpoint for another problematic attack. We see them palming those 3 cards, going back to palming 2, considering that Tunic, considering forcing the arousing wave. It will be a block for 6. Will Tommaso jump in?
I wonder what the effect of almost baiting your opponent with thinking about the 8, showing you respect the arsenal, and then just throwing down to 2, maybe saying this isn't the turn for me, and then asking his opponent that arousing wave is going to have to get popped eventually. If it gets popped here, Stefano is happy to reset with that Release the Tension going into Arsenal, maybe passing the turn that way.
Tommaso will not be dissuaded, will break this arousing wave. Do jump up with a Fang Strike to make this CNC an extra point of damage. Stefano taking 1, will lose that Arsenal card as a result. Was a copy of Tar Pit Trap, which would explain why they were not able to use it to soak up the damage from Command and Conquer.
And it's an unfortunate loss. We've talked about earlier this weekend how important that card can be in the Assassin matchup, but in Stefano's game plan here and in the role he's trying to play at this stage of the game, it's fine. He's not losing something that deals damage. He's losing something that defends. He's putting that Release of Tension in Arsenal and holding on to another one, trying, hoping to make it through 1 turn without disruption so that he can deal very big, unpreventable damage back at Tommaso.
We see the silver getting broken here by pitching Double Trouble. Another blue pitched for Beckoning Mistblade. We'll take a look at the hand. We see Sigil on the side for Tommaso here. See if we can't catch the rest. Leave No Witnesses, Art of Desire, so no blue here. This Beckoning Mistblade maybe being seen as bait with those 2 blue cards being pitched. No dice for Stefano. Does take the 1. That Mistblade will be active to little effect this time.
Stefano is unafraid of a levels of enlightenment. It's just damage. The only thing that matters is disruption. And it's possible that what was happening from Tommaso's side was not searching for a bigger levels of enlightenment, unless that happens to be his arsenal card. It could have just been searching for a disruptive effect, because he knows that's the only way he stays in this game, is to keep throwing disruption. He needs to keep using his tempo effectively, and that's what he does. He finds the leave no witnesses off the top, and then just strings together, because it presents a breakpoint that takes Stefano off that arsenal.
Both of these daggers here used very efficiently. Leave no witnesses with one in hand, one in arsenal, representing all kinds of shenanigans. But we know Sigil of Solace awaits on the other side for Tommaso Vecino. Stefano here debating, covering up this leave no witnesses.
If this isn't a tar pit trap, he can't do 3 block and 1 equipment because of the fact that Spider's Bite exists. He could use Knock the Death Whistle as a 3 block, but he's looking at a way to cover up this leave no witnesses, and he's reaching for that release the tension we thought would be an important aggressive piece for him.
Release the tension here, mitigated down to blocking duty. And we'll see that tar pit trap coming through for the extra point. Sigil of Solace will be extended to gain some life for Tommaso.
Interesting prioritization of keeping the tunic alive over keeping that release the tension. These start and play, stay in play effects will be giving him more value. I think Stefano thinks, I'm not just going to get 1 more tunic in 2 turns. I'm going to get 1 in 5 turns as well. And both of those, their ability to load tunic, death dealer, draw a card is going to be really critical for getting these last few very big turns off as we reach the end of the game.
Release the tension, flipped away for a Bolton shot. It is followed by Read the Glide Path and Lace with Blood Rot. We do have some momentum back here for Stefano Mione. It's 9 points of dominated go-again damage with a Blood Rot in tow.
Stefano choosing to not keep an arsenal at the end of this turn because he finally hit that dominate. So many times he's activated that Azalea and just gotten a buff off the top of the deck, whether he knew it and had looked at it and had confirmation, or when he went blind, I believe, once. Azalea, in this case, turning into some damage, and he doesn't care about keeping that arsenal. He's worried it'll get disrupted anyways. What he cares about is getting that damage now, and in 2 turns, he'll be able to get it again after setting up an arsenal.
We go way back to Tommaso. It's Bonds of Attraction to start this turn with 2 cards in hand, 1 left in the arsenal here.
These are very timid effects, these Bonds of Attraction. Even when they're presented as 1 card hands, you're not really scared of them. When they're presented as 3 or 4 card hands, you're thinking you might get a Nick just for some damage. You might get a Chi just to be able to activate that Mask of Momentum, Mask of Haunting Nightmares, and take your opponent off a card. Both ways, Stefano would usually, in an earlier spot in the game, be fine with taking this damage. In this case, the on-hit of 1 card off the top of the deck is what's starting to matter against Stefano.
Painful sequences here from Tommaso Vecino. We see Mask of Recurring Nightmares utilized with that Chi. A card dedicated to blocking and just a Nick pushing this effect over anyway. Not only will this strip additional threats from Stefano, but this is a healthy chunk of life being gained potentially for Tommaso, putting them back out of range of these big dominate attacks.
A couple points of life gained for Tommaso, a couple points of life lost for Stefano. 3 cards out of deck lost for Stefano, kind of 4. 1 on block, 1 to Mask, 1 to Just a Nick, and 1 to the Bonds of Attraction. That's what New needs to do. That deck is getting really thin for Stefano.
Stefano is going to take aim, flip the Spire sniping, revealed with this cross wrap. Taking a look for something more premium on the top of that deck to fire with their dominated ability. It will not come to fruition. Just 7 points of damage from this makeshift turn here.
While Tommaso thinks about how he's going to block, I want to take a look maybe at the deck size for Stefano. It looks like that's about the size of his Banish Zone, and both his Banish Zone and his deck look about half the size of the deck, of the graveyard. That means to me he's got about 15, 16, depending on if he overboarded, maybe 18 cards left. Only a couple of them are going to be arrows based on the ratios these players usually play towards. Stefano, he might be getting fatigued here.
Tommaso here with the quickest tunic block I have ever seen. Doesn't come to much. Art of Desire going to get jumped up by Venomous Bite. It will be a swift chunk of damage, eating Knock the Death Whistle. No card drawn here for Tommaso as their turn comes to an end. Stefano finding themselves at 6, but for the first time in quite a while, undisrupted, has 4 cards to work with here to put something together. Death Dealer loads red in the ledger. This feels like a big part of hopefully assembling some kind of turn to claw back into this game.
Tommaso actively choosing to take a lot of damage there in order to continue to enact this plan of playing something that will get a card off the top of the deck. He knows that Art of Desire Body will, especially with that Venomous Bite being added on top of it. He's going to be dealing damage back to Stefano, taking cards off the deck, top of the deck. He's happy. Maybe regretting it just a touch here, given that the clapback of the non-disruptive hand was red in the ledger specifically, which is Stefano's way back in.
We see the count there from Tommaso. 12 cards remaining for Stefano Mione, and that influences the decision here to block out this red in the ledger and continue to play this grindy attrition-based game. Stefano, looking at a hand that I think contains the Rain Razors, may have the potential to jump this over the top with those extra cards if they really want to force to a point of damage. Going to take a moment, consider what's been exhausted by Tommaso so far before making that all-important decision.
I think what Stefano is scared of is the third Warmongers. One on block here, one on block or pitch earlier in the game. Where is the third copy? Stefano could just play this for 1 damage here, gets the Ponder, or he could be planning to use it for the Amplifying Arrow next turn. Instead, he chooses to play it and continue to chip just small amounts in.
Red in the ledger, up and active. Tommaso down to 13 here. Ponder token resolves. Finds perhaps a more interesting card for Stefano's following turn. Looked like the Amplifying Arrow that made its way into the arsenal. The 1-card hand will be Leave No Witnesses from Tommaso here. Will earn a response from Stefano if they want that Amplifying Arrow to remain.
Every time Stefano finds a way back into the game, he found a non-disruptive turn from Tommaso, and he just took the damage. Then he got a red in the ledger, took an entire hand, only got a 1-card play back. That 1-card play is Leave. Tommaso always seems to be finding that ability to time his attacks perfectly. That Leave was, I think, in Arsenal earlier, which means he prioritized at that point in time the Art of Desire Body and those kinds of higher damage plays on top of the Leave No Witnesses. Now that Stefano's lower, plays that Leave. We lose one of those cards to the top of the deck and the arsenal, and Stefano's back to a smaller hand at this stage.
Yeah, Amplifying Arrow and Falcon Wing lost to that impactful attack. 2 more arrows disappearing, much like Stefano's momentum in this game. They're going to need some help to stay in this one. We see Endless Arrow loaded from Death Dealer, that final Codex of Frailty being pitched away to facilitate this turn. We see the counting you were alluding to earlier in the day. How many arrows remain? How likely am I to hit something in the dark with a little bit of Dominate? With this few cards remaining, Stefano very likely to be aware of their pitch stack to some extent. It's been a while since we saw a knock the Death Whistle. These cards are the only thing remaining to give them a chance of becoming a calling champion.
3 cards in hand if those are big buffs, and if that's an arrow on the top of the deck. This could be just a big enough Dominate to at least take Tommaso low and die to the final Dominate on a later turn. There are some sigils and some defense reactions I think still available for Tommaso that will enable him to live through more than just this 13 that we see.
We're going to see the Azalea flip blind, and it's Tar Pit Trap that makes its way into the arsenal, and Stefano Mione's turn drops dead, immediately stuck with those remaining cards. The trap face up, unable to fire any arrows, and all of the momentum shifting straight back to Tommaso Vecino.
I think Stefano was in the need of a big Dominate. He knew that's his only chance at winning the game. He didn't know exactly his pitch stack, where exactly he was. It turns out he was at that Tar Pit Trap. Maybe it was even before the shuffle of the Knock the Death Whistle, and it was just sitting there, but punished with the Azalea there, unfortunately.
Beckoning Mistblade will be the start of this turn. We see levels of Enlightenment in hand pitched away for Spider's Bite here after the blade is denied by Skullbone Crosswrap. Unfortunately for Stefano, the remaining attack lurking in that hand is a copy of Command and Conquer. This Tar Pit Trap looking to be this Italian player's grave.
Even if he does attack with defend with a Tar Pit here, yes, the Command and Conquer loses on hit, but it's on hit right now is lethal. He's at 6 damage to a 2. Stefano's way on the back foot, has barely any deck left. This looks like it's been well piloted to by New.
Yeah, I'm reliably informed. On hit die, not prevented by Tar Pit Trap, unfortunately.
That'd be great.
It would be a good card. Limited amount of cards left for Stefano on this side. Trying to find a way to keep the puzzle together. Does not want to dedicate another card to this Spider's Bite, but understands that it will cause the follow-up attack to become much more difficult to block.
Stefano thinking here. I think he's seeing the writing on the wall, but deciding he has to be able to block this. Otherwise, if this next attack has big enough damage, he's just going to die to not being able to block with the 3 bucks in his hand. So
will commit that tar pit trap to the spider's bite, and we see Command and Conquer, which may earn as many as 3 cards here from Stefano, depending on how many arrows they have available. We'll see if we can take a glance. Endless Arrow laced with Frailty, release the tension. It's going to be 2 cards that will do the job this time. Means there are 2 buffs remaining here to their maximum effect.
He's got 1 dream left. No.
And we do see Stefano Mioli offering the fist bump. The story of Azalea, ace in the hole, will continue for another week. But as we make our way